Jack the Murder Mystery.
The night was silent, but in the silence, something sinister stirred beneath the earth. An old garden at the edge of the city, overgrown with weeds and forgotten by time, became the center of horror when children, playing, stumbled across a pale hand pushing through the soil. Their screams brought neighbors, then police, then a flood of whispers across the entire city. A body, a young woman, buried hastily. The garden no longer smelled of damp earth and flowers. It smelled of fear. Jack stood among the crowd, his eyes fixed on the crime scene. He had no badge, no uniform, just a heart full of dreams that poverty had stolen from him. He had wanted all his life to be a policeman. He trained his body, studied as much as he could, dreamed of chasing criminals. But dreams in his world required money and connections, things he never had. When the police recruitment passed him by, he accepted the pain, but never let the dream die. And when he saw that girl's body being pulled from the ground, something inside him ignited. If no one else could find justice for her, maybe he could. The investigation began slowly. Police questioned the usual suspects, then retreated into their routine. But Jack felt the story had more layers. He started quietly, wandering to the cafe where the girl worked. Her co-workers described her kindness, her quiet nature, and then hesitation. They spoke of a man who sat in the corner daily, staring but never speaking. Another co-worker whispered about an argument she'd had with a stranger outside. Jack listened, absorbed, and asked questions no one else thought of. He scribbled notes on old scraps of paper, following threads where they led. Soon, the entire city seemed wrapped in shadows of suspicion. Neighbors claimed to have seen her near the library. A shopkeeper insisted she had passed by his store late one night, looking frightened. A friend recalled she had once said, "I think someone is following me." Jack knocked on doors, spoke with old women leaning from balconies, men sipping tea at roadside stalls, children who played in the alleys. Each gave him fragments, but fragments could mislead as easily as they could reveal. And then came the threats. One evening, as Jack walked home, a car sped toward him, its headlights blazing like the eyes of a predator. He threw himself against a wall, scraping his skin, barely surviving. Another night, masked men cornered him. They swung their fists, leaving him bruised and bloodied. "Stay out of this," one hissed before fleeing. But the attacks only confirmed what Jack already knew. He was close to something someone wanted buried. Jack began to map the girl's last days, from the cafe to the library to a rented apartment where she had lived alone. He discovered she had been collecting notes, pieces of information she never got to share. A torn page in her diary spoke of fear. A neighbor remembered strange men visiting her at night. And then, a shopkeeper swore she once argued with a policeman. That revelation chilled Jack. Could it be true? Could the very people sworn to protect the city be part of her death? As days turned into restless nights, Jack followed clue after clue. He sat quietly in the cafe, waiting to see if the strange man returned. He searched old records in the library, hoping for a trail. He questioned the street sweeper, the night guard at the apartment complex, the taxi driver who claimed to have driven her home. Every person was a suspect, every answer a half-truth. The city itself seemed complicit, as if its shadows were trying to smother the truth. And then came night. They took him, dragged into a warehouse at the edge of the city, tied to a chair, fists raining down. They mocked him, told him he was a fool for chasing shadows, but in their arrogance, they admitted too much. Jack, beaten and bloodied, kept his mind sharp. He remembered their faces, their voices, their threats. When he escaped, by sheer determination, by raw will, he carried not just his body out of that warehouse, but the knowledge of who was truly behind it all. The chase that followed turned the city into a battlefield. Jack ran through alleys, across rooftops, hunted like prey. The men who had silenced the girl now wanted him silenced too. But Jack had proof. He clutched it to his chest, the only weapon that mattered. And when finally he confronted the man who had ordered it all, the man who stood at the top of the rotten chain, Jack knew there could be no turning back. The fight was savage, desperate, a clash of survival and justice. In the end, it was Jack who stood victorious, the villain defeated, the network exposed. The police had no choice but to act. Arrests were made, files seized, truths revealed. For once, the system bent under the weight of undeniable evidence. And in the aftermath, when the city breathed again, Jack was called forward. He had never worn a uniform, never carried a badge, but he had done what no one else could. They placed a medal in his hands, a symbol of respect, of honor, of justice. The crowd cheered. Children pointed at him with wide eyes, and even hardened officers nodded in respect. Jack's shoes were still worn, his clothes still plain, but his spirit towered above them all. He had proven that courage could come from the humblest places. that justice could rise from the poorest streets. And somewhere in that old garden, the earth still remembers. It remembers the girl who died, the boy who refused to give up, and the story that turned whispers into legend. The garden stands silent, but in its silence, it tells the tale of Jack, the boy who became a protector without ever wearing a badge. This was only the beginning, because in a city of shadows, where secrets fester and darkness waits, there will always be another mystery. And perhaps, somewhere, Jack will be watching, ready to fight again.